Fay said, thought, or did to me. "Damon, you march right outside to the front porch," I told my little boy. "Tell the reporters to beat it. Tell them to take a hike. Tell them to hit the road, Jack, okay?" "Yeah, take a hike, Ike," Damon said. I grinned at Damon, who understood I was making the best of the situation. He smiled back. Janelle finally grinned, and she took Damon's hand. I was getting up. They sensed that action was coming. It sure was. I moseyed outside to the front porch. I was going to speak to the news people. I didn't bother to put on my shoes or shirt. I thought of the immortal words of Tarzan. "Ah-yee-ya-ya-ya." "How are you folks this fine winter morning?" I asked, standing there in some baggy chinos. "Anybody need more coffee or sweet rolls?" "Detective Cross, Catherine Rose and Thomas Dunn are blaming you for the mistakes made in Florida. Mr. Dunn released another statement last night." Someone gave me the morning news free of charge, too. Yes, I was still the scapegoat of the week. "I can understand the Dunn's disappointment at the results in Florida," I said in an even tone. "Just drop your coffee containers anywhere on the lawn, like you've been doing. I'll pick up later." "Then you agree you made a mistake?" someone said. "Handing over the ransom money without seeing Maggie Rose first?" "No, I don't agree at all. I had no choice down in Florida and South Carolina. The only choice I had was not to go with the contact man at all. See, when you're handcuffed and the other guy has the gun, you're at a serious disadvantage. When your backup gets there late, that's another problem." It was as if they didn't hear a word I'd said. "Detective, our sources say it was your decision to pay the ransom in the first place," someone suggested. "Why do you come here and camp out on my lawn?" I said to that bullshit. "Why do you come here and scare my family? Disrupt this neighborhood? I don't care what you print about me, but I will tell you this. You don't have a clue as to what the hell is going on. You could be endangering the Dunn girl." "Is Maggie Rose Dunn alive?" someone shouted. I turned away and went back inside the house. That would teach them. Right. Now they understood all about respecting people's privacy. "Hey, Peanut Butter Man, what's up?" A crowd of a different sort recognized me a little later that morning. Men and women were lined up 3 deep on 12th Street in front of St. Anthony's Church. They were hungry and cold, and none of them had Nikons or Leicas hung around their necks. "Hey, Peanut Butter Man, I seen you on the TV. You a movie star now?" I heard someone call out. "Hell yeah, can't you tell?" For the past few years, Samson and I have been working the soup kitchen at St. A's. We do it 2 or 3 days a week. I started there because of Maria, who had done some of her casework through the parish. I kept on after her death for the most selfish of reasons. The work made me feel good. Samson welcomes folks for lunch at the front door. He takes the numbered ticket they're given when they get online. He's also a deterrent to people acting up. I'm the physical deterrent inside the dinner hall. I'm called the Peanut Butter Man. Jimmy Moore, who runs the kitchen, believes in the nutritional power of peanut butter, along with a full meal that usually consists of rolls, 2 vegetables, a meat or fish stew, and dessert. Anyone who wants it gets a cup of peanut butter. Every day. "Hey, Peanut Butter Man, you got some good peanut butter for us today? You got Skippy or that Peter Pan shit?" I grinned at familiar hangdog faces in the crowd. My nose filled with the familiar smells of body odor, bad breath, stale liquor. "Don't know exactly what's on the menu today." The regulars know Samson and me. Most of them also know we're police. Some of them know I'm a shrink, since I do counseling outside the kitchen, in a prefab trailer that says, "The Lord helps them what helps themselves. Come on the hell in." Jimmy Moore runs an efficient, beautiful place. He claims it's the largest soup kitchen in the East, and we'll do an average of over 1,100 meals a day. The kitchen starts serving at 10:15, and lunch is over by 12:30. That means if you get there at exactly 1 minute past 12:30, you go hungry that day. Discipline, be it ever so humble, is a big part of St. A's program. No one is admitted drunk or too obviously high. You're expected to behave during your meal. You get about 10 minutes to eat. Other people are cold and hungry, waiting on the long line outside. Everyone is treated with dignity and respect. No questions are asked of any of the guests. If you wait online, you get fed. You're addressed as either Sir or Ms., and the mostly volunteer staff is trained to be upbeat. Smile checks are actually done on the new volunteers working the serving line or the dining room. Around noon, there was a major disturbance outside. I could hear Samson shouting. Something was going down. People on the soup line were shouting and cursing loudly. Then I heard Samson call for help. "Alex, come on out here." I ran outside and immediately saw what was going down. My fists were clenched into tight, hard anvils. The press had found us again. They had found me. A couple of squirrely news cameramen were filming folks on the soup kitchen line, and that's very unpopular, understandably. These people were trying to keep the last of their self-respect, and they didn't want to be seen on TV standing on a soup line for a handout. Jimmy Moore is a tough, rude Irishman who used to work on the D.C. police force with us. He was already outside, and it was Jimmy, actually, who was making most of the noise. "You cock-sucking, motherfucking sons of bitches!" I suddenly found myself yelling. "You're not invited here. You're not fucking welcome. Leave these people alone. Let us serve our lunch in peace." The photographers stopped shooting their pictures. They stared at me. So did Samson, and Jimmy Moore, and most everybody on the soup line. The press didn't leave, but they backed away. Most of them crossed 12th Street, and I knew they would wait for me to come out. We were serving people their lunch, I thought to myself, as I watched the reporters and photographers waiting for me in a park across the street. Who the hell did the press serve these days, other than the wealthy business conglomerates and families they all worked for? Angry rumblings were starting up around us. "People are hungry and cold. Let's eat. People got a right to eat," someone yelled from the line. I went back inside to my post. We started to serve lunch. I was the peanut butter man. Chapter 29. In the city of Wilmington, Delaware, Gary Murphy was shoveling away 4 inches of snow. It was Wednesday afternoon, the 6th of January. He was thinking about the kidnapping. He was trying to keep under control. He was thinking about the little rich bitch, Maggie Rose Dunn, when a shiny blue Cadillac pulled up alongside his small colonial-style house on Central Avenue. Gary cursed under the breath streaming from his mouth. 6-year-old Ronnie, Gary's daughter, was making snowballs, setting them out on the icy crust that topped the snow. She squealed when she saw her Uncle Marty climbing out of his car. "Who's that beautiful little girl?" Uncle Marty called across the yard to Ronnie. "Is that a movie star?" "It is. I think so." "Is that Ronnie?" "I think it is." "Uncle Marty! Uncle Marty!" Ronnie screamed as she ran toward the car. Every time Gary saw Marty Kasajian, he thought of the really putrid movie Uncle Buck. In Uncle Buck, John Candy was an unlikable, unwelcome, unlikely relative who kept showing up to torture a white-bread Midwestern family. It was an obnoxious flick. Uncle Marty Kasajian was rich and successful, and louder than John Candy, and he was here. Gary despised Missy's big brother for all of those reasons, but most of all, because Marty was his boss. Missy must have heard Marty's commotion. How could anyone on Central Avenue or nearby North Street miss it? She came out of the back door with a dish towel still wrapped around one hand. "Look who's here," Missy squealed. She and Ronnie sounded like identical piglets to Gary. "Kel fucking surprise," Gary felt like yelling. He held it all in, the way he held in all of his true feelings at home. He imagined beating Marty to death with his snow shovel, actually murdering Kasajian in front of Missy and Ronnie. Show them who the man of the house really was. "The divine Miss M," Marty Kasajian continued to motor-mouth a mile a minute. He finally acknowledged Gary. "How you doing, Gar, old buddy? How about those Eagles? Randall the Sea's on fire. Got your Super Bowl tickets lined up?" "Sure thing, Marty. 2 tickets on the 50-yard line." Gary Murphy tossed his aluminum shovel into a low bank of snow. He trudged over to where Missy and Ronnie were standing with Uncle Marty. Then they all went inside the house together. Missy brought out expensive eggnog and pieces of fresh apple raisin pie with hunks of cheddar on the side. Marty's piece was bigger than all the others. He was the man, right? Marty handed an envelope to Missy. It was Missy's allowance from her big brother, which he wanted Gary to see. Really rub salt in the wounds that way. "Mommy, Uncle Marty and Daddy have to talk for a couple of minutes, sweetheart," Marty Kasajian said to Ronnie as soon as she finished his piece of pie. "I think I forgot something for you out in my car. I don't know. Could be on the back seat. You better go look. Put your coat on first, honey," Missy said to her daughter. "Don't catch cold." Ronnie laughed squeaked as she hugged her uncle. Then she hurried away. "Now, what did you get her?" Missy whispered conspiratorially to her brother. "You're too much." Marty shrugged as if he couldn't remember. With everybody else, Missy was okay. She reminded Gary of his real mom. She even looked like his real mom. It was only with her brother Gary had noticed that she changed for the worse. She even started picking up Marty's obnoxious habits and speech cadences. "Listen, kids," Marty hunched in closer to the two of them. "We have a little problem. Treatable, because we're catching it early, but something we have to deal with. Pretend like we're all adults, you know?" Missy was instantly on guard. "What is it, Marty? What's the problem?" Marty Kasajian looked genuinely concerned and uncomfortable now. Gary had seen him use this hangdog look 1,000 times with his customers, especially when he had to confront somebody on an overdue bill or fire somebody in the office. "Gar?" He looked at Gary for help with this. "You want to say something here?" Gary shrugged, as if he didn't have clue one, right? "Fuck you, asshole," he was thinking to himself. "You're on your own this time." Gary could feel a smile spreading, coming all the way up from his stomach. He didn't want it to show, but it finally broke across his lips. This was kind of a delectable moment. Getting caught had its own subtle rewards. Might be a lesson here, something to go to school on. "Sorry, I don't think this is funny," Marty Kasajian shook his head and said. "I really don't, Gary." "Well, I don't either," Gary said in a funny voice. It was high-pitched and boyish, not really his voice. Missy gave him a strange look. "What is going on?" she demanded. "Will you two please let me in on this?" Gary looked at his wife. He was really angry at her, too. She was part of the trap, and she knew it. "My sales record with Atlantic really stinks this quarter," Gary finally said and shrugged. "Is that it, Marty?" Marty frowned and looked down at his new Timberland boots. "Oh, it's more than that, Gar. Your sales record is almost non-existent. What's a lot worse, is that you have over $3,300 in advances outstanding. You're in the red, Gary. You're minus. I don't want to say much more, or I know I'll regret it. I honestly don't know how to address this situation. This is very difficult for me. Embarrassing. I'm so sorry, Missy. I hate this." Missy covered her face with both hands, and she began to cry. She cried quietly at first, not wanting to cry. Then the sobs became louder. Tears came into her brother's eyes. "That's what I didn't want. I'm sorry, sis." Marty was the one to reach out and comfort her. "I'm all right." Missy pulled away from her brother. She stared across the breakfast table at Gary. Her eyes seemed small and darker. "Where have you been all of these months on the road, Gary? What have you been doing?" "Oh, Gary, sometimes I feel like I don't even know you." "Say something to make this a little better. Please, say something, Gary." Gary thought about it carefully before he said a word. Then he said, "I love you so much, Missy. I love you and Ronnie more than I love my life itself." Gary lied, and he knew it was a pretty good one. Extremely well told, well acted. What he wanted to do was to laugh in their goddamn faces. What he wanted to do most was to kill all of them. That was the ticket to punch. Boom, boom, boom. Multiple homicide time in Wilmington. Get his master plan rolling again. Just then, Ronnie came running back inside the house. A new movie cassette was clutched in her hands, and she was smiling like a balloon head. "Look what Uncle Marty brought me." Gary held his head in both hands. He couldn't stop the screaming inside his brain. "I want to be somebody." Chapter 30. Life and death went on in Southeast. Sampson and I were back on the Sanders and Turner murder cases. Not surprisingly, little progress had been made in solving the 6 homicides. Not surprisingly, nobody cared.